Hello and welcome back to the next One Piece review and discussion. We are here following on from the last chapter where things had certainly taken a step up. We were ramping up now to what is going to be a huge climactic battle, and we are just at the precipice now of everything coming to a head, and it is pretty insane. So, without further ado, chapter 1177, Fury. Today's cover story is obviously a lovely picture of Robin and some moles planting some flowers in a flower bed, which is pretty nice to see in connection with her obviously flower fruit, and she's obviously using her hands in the background as help with the flowers. So that's a pretty cool way of using the gifts, I guess. But nevertheless, we have a chapter to discuss. So, last we had left off, Lilith had shown these ODCs, these converters that can harness energy, convert it from one thing into something else, and talked about how Elbaph was brimming with energy everywhere, like she could just feel it, and questioned Frankie and said, your cola contraption, your whole body is incredible. Like, it's something that never seems possible or is far beyond what it should be, but you've got it to work and it works exceptionally well. But why limit yourself to just cola? Like, why pick cola in the first place? And later in the chapter, we see Lilith use these converters on fire, turning it into ice, and then supercharging a cola bottle up for Frankie to give him a bit of a power boost. Because it's interesting when we come to Frankie's abilities when a lot of it is driven by the cola. So I guess Frankie's strength increase is if we change his energy input, his output is going to be much greater. So I think that's where Oda's going for there, and that is where the Vegapunk Frankie connection of like working together to improve his overall cyborg body is what's going to happen. So we see Frankie gets his power boost here. We obviously see the school gets rescued. Killingham's furious at this, summons a Lindworm from one of the dream nightmares. But in combination of Sanji, Jinbei, and Frankie, all three big heavy hitters, come in and deal quite quickly, may I add, with Killingham and the dream nightmare. So pretty insane. Literally, like within a page or two, have dealt with what needed to be done. The Straw Hats are not messing around now as a Yonko crew. They are really stepping up to the mark and proving just how strong they are now. And that is pretty good. I think at this stage of the story they are. I think we can all attest to that. But the other side of the island, we saw obviously the demonic giant pirates were closing in, pressing every other giant back. They're sort of unkillable, they're immune that they had, and the strength, this bodies that just regenerate were really, really hard to deal with. And there was a moment of laughter where Dory and Broggy had previously took each other out trying to attack Zoro, and it gave them a moment where they regained themselves and they realised what they were doing and they couldn't live with it. So with pride, they killed each other. They decided that it was the only way to truly deal with this and not harm anyone else, especially Ja Rule. And with pride as warriors, they chopped each other down without any more words. They just knew what each other wanted. And that flipped the reverse back, and they came back to normal, fully strengthed, fully recovered. Absolutely insane. So they all realise and look at each other. So Hyrule, Stans and Zoro, Dory and Broggy look and go, oh, so we just have to kill these guys and they'll revert back. Interesting. But you know what? I think we're up to the challenge. And as much as they were all like, sort of like, oh, it like hurts my heart, like this is going to be tough, deep down they were like, oh, we're getting to fight demonic like giants. This is going to be actually really fun. So they were trying to hold back their enjoyment, but clearly they couldn't hide it all too well. So this is where we pick up. We're back in the village. There are giants rescuing the kids and their parents, who are obviously injured from what Summers have been doing. And Colin is just watching on, enamoured by what he's witnessing. A like full scale giant battle. Like everywhere's on fire. There's giants holding off the demonic giant. It is like chaos. And Colin is like, this is it. Like, this is the strength of a warrior. Like, these are the people are so cool right now. Look at them fighting. And we can see all of the demonic giants are like goading the other ones and goading Dory and Broggy, being like, why would you give this up? Like, this ultimate body, the strength, the regeneration, like, we are absolutely invincible at this moment. And we see one of the giants grabs like a pitchfork and stabs straight through Dory's shield, no resistance, and just pierces his arm. And Dory's like, damn, like, pretty actual strength you've got there. Like, I'm proud of this fierce sort of nature you have about you, but it's a real shame. And we see that they're all ready to just start scattering. But this is happening simultaneously to we jump back over to the lift where Chopper, Gabon, and Kashi are. And it turns out two of the demonic giants had strayed from the pack, and it is DDT and Rhodes who have actually caught wind of where Kashi is and the others and are closing in on them. And we can see they're charging Kashi down, like, don't you want to be cut down? Like, don't you want to become immortal like us? You can just join us, Kashi. Like, this feels incredible. And Kashi stood there, like, protecting Gabon and Chopper, obviously, but is like, I can't do this. Like, I can't hurt these guys. I don't want them to be wounded because they're my friends. So obviously these guys don't know what the guys in the West Village know about killing them, and they'll just revert back. But they're like panicked now. They're like, what are we going to do? And Chopper's like, look, you're going to be the one to have to do this. Like, Gabon's injured. Like, what are we doing here? And he's like, it's impossible. Like, we've been friends forever. This isn't going to work. And we can see that at the same time that all of the heavy hitters throw out their big attacks to start chopping down giants, we've got like Broggy talking to a guy called Gantonio about how he always took extra food. Like, he'd take one bite, but it'd literally be half of the food. Like, he'd just be devouring. And he's like, sorry, Chief, as he's getting cut in half by Broggy. Incredible reference here. Hyruden throws a fist at a dude, and his named attack here is Gungnir. Odin's spear. Like, he has an attack based on Odin's one-hit spear, like this unmissable spear that will always hit its mark, and Hyruden names an attack like that, so that's pretty impressive, and it just destroys this giant. We see, obviously, our Ikoku sovereignty, our special of the giant, thrown out by Dory here to immediately annihilate another one. And we see Stanton comes in with a gigantic drum, his big hammer barrel he's wielding. Again, they are slicing through these dudes, no issue. They're enjoying themselves slightly too much. And then we see Zoro. He can't have everyone else, take all the credit and have all the action. So he comes out with the Red Ogre Mega Fury, the 3-sword style attack that literally dissects a giant's head into like 9 pieces. I'm talking like this dude had no chance and just splinters into like these like parts. His head explodes. And Ja Rule stood in the back going, is it me, or are they really giddy about doing this? Like, this is kind of worrying. Like, they're enjoying this a bit too much now. So all that is happening there. The giants are starting to revert back, and that they can see this happening, I assume. But Chopper's group don't. So Kashi is trying to hold off DDT and Rhodes here, and is like, look, I can't do this. You're going to have to forgive me. Gabon goes to grab his axe, like wounded as he is, but tries to help. Chopper eats his rumble, goes straight into a monster point, and just punches one of the demonic giants. Just swipes at his head. One hit. And the guy's laughing like, I didn't even feel that. Like, do you really think? And he kind of like stutters here as he's trying to get this sentence out. And as he falls, the shadow that looks pretty demonic attached to him sort of like comes away and apart from this giant. And he hits the ground, and the dummy reversey sort of door that happens where it like flips them over into demonic, he hits the ground and he flips back into his normal form. And they're all kind of looking at each other going, wait, why did he just turn back to normal? What just happened? So while everyone is getting absolutely decimated, literally killed in order to return back, Chopper took one swipe in his monster point, didn't kill the guy, but it immediately transformed him back. So there's a lot of questions here now about what is going on with Chopper here, and specifically how it's interacting with the reverse technique that Eam is using, because that is pretty interesting that Chopper just glances a dude, like just taps him, and it immediately gets the thing to wear off the reverse. Now, from what I know, none of the others who are currently dealing with the giant are using a devil fruit ability. Chopper's the first one here now to face off against a demonic giant with a devil fruit. So whether it has something to do with that, or more specifically the devil fruit he's using and where he's at power-wise, going straight into monster point. But even Chopper's kind of like, wait, what just happened there? Like, I'm confused. So this certainly will need explaining, because they're all going to be like, oh, we have to kill everyone, but they're okay because they just revert back afterwards, and Chopper will go, I just had to tap a dude and it immediately dropped it. So where's that connection going? So clearly Chopper's being built up to something here. But even cooler this chapter is we go back to the library. We can see Zeus is huge now, being fed the black balls from Nami, to build himself back up again. And killing him has been dissected into parts. Literally, his head is currently just a head, and he's gagged at the mouth. We see Frankie tying up his legs and his arms, and we see Sanji is just sat on top of his torso, just sort of like chilling. And they're all discussing while he's barking away, like looking down on these, especially because Jinbei is the one who's holding his head. He is furious that a mere fishman is the one who's holding on to him. Like, he's like disgusted by this. And he's like, in the position you're in, do you really think you can get away with just barking like this? Like, it's not going to help at all. Like, look at what's happening. And Frankie's like, look, we've pretty much got this nailed on then. So it turns out these guys can't regenerate that well if you splinter their body part and don't let them come back together. So maybe we just box them up in different places and be done with them. And it's like, well, it's one way to deal with these guys. So their regeneration doesn't happen from like a singular point. So you can't like destroy the whole body and then it regenerates from like the head, for example. Or more specifically, if the body parts are intact, then they can't be regenerated. So maybe it's more if you just split them up like this, but don't actually hugely destroy like we've seen with Summer, then they don't have the ability to regenerate because their body parts are still around somewhere, so they just need to be reconnected. So Sanji goes on this whole thing now and says, I can't believe these are the knights, these are the guys that protect the Holy Land. Like, it's kind of disgusting, really. And, like, Frankie's like, well, if you think about it, we are a lot stronger now, Sanji, especially because Luffy's an emperor. We can definitely deal with these dudes. And he's like, yeah, fair point and all, but it just really pisses me off as well, like, that they would come to Elbaph and do this. Like, that they would think we were such a vermin and, like, look down on us. And Killingham gets one more word in here, and he's like, look, you guys are going to regret underestimating us if you keep going. So clearly, a foreshadowing moment here where I think things aren't as easy as they seem. I don't think it's going to be so clear-cut that the Straw Hats have just literally within a matter of chapters have dealt with the problem. I think a lot more is going to happen, and a lot more things that could go wrong might happen. But Jinbei is fully locked in here. It's like, yeah, no, I'm fully on board here, because there was still that ominous presence, and there's still that person who hasn't taken any damage yet. We can't let our guard down. We can't deal with it. And Nami is talking with Zeus, and it's like, right, you're now full up. You keep pouring rain wherever we go, because the fires will keep spreading, and it's like the one weakness of Elbaph. And he's like, right, cool, got it, on it. Loki just decides to appear from the clouds with Luffy laughing away, and it's like, oh, sees his crew, and they're all like, Jesus, that is a big dragon. Like, it's almost as big as a Sea King with how big he is. And Sanji's like, oh, cool. Right, well, if he's with Luffy and, like, they all seem happy, then that's got to be Loki, right? Like, that's terrifying. And Frankie's like, that's pretty cool. What a buddy you've brought along. And they're all, like, having a moment where they're all admiring this. And then out of the blue, Nami loses her ever-living shit. Literally is like, are you out of your mind? Like, she is furious. Not only does she call Loki a freak, like, oh, you've just gone and made friends with this guy, but she's like, he is a monster of this proportion, and he's doing just as much damage as those guys were doing. Like, are you thinking for 1 second here? Like, all the flames you're causing, everything you're doing, you're burning Elbaph to the ground, and you're just defeating the purpose of protecting. And absolutely the best panel of this chapter is Luffy looking absolutely drained. Like, it's so done with Nami just tiratingly shouting at him, and he just looks so dejected. And little Ragnar just puts a hand on his shoulder to, like, comfort him, and then he loses his shit with Loki. He's like, you've got me in trouble now. And Luffy's like, what am I going to do? So Loki just decides to just thunder breath Luffy to shut him up, and just absolutely sends him nowhere, because Luffy goes, oh, anyway, why are you spitting lightning at me? And Loki's like, hold up, what? How did you not take any damage from that? And he's like, dude, it's lightning. Like, you really need to catch up with this whole, like, rubber persona I've got here. And it's like, you know what? If that would have hurt me, I would have sent you flying. So they've got this little, like, back and forth going on here. And then all of a sudden, they are, like, locked in again, because they feel the presence going off on the other side of the island. And this whole sequence now is incredible, because we do get to see where Brook and Usopp are, and we see back in the middle of the branch where Brook had been. We hadn't seen him. We didn't know where he was up to, because we saw Gunko or the possessed Gunko, realising the fruit that Loki was using, but we didn't see where Brook had been. Brook is on the floor with sword through his chest, out almost for the count, looking bad, looking rough. Like, this dude, like, I know he's a skeleton, but, like, I don't know how you make a skeleton bleed. He looks bad, and he's begging Usopp to just run. He's like, look, I came here for my own selfish reasons. She's dangerous, but you've got to get out of here. And Usopp is in a pretty bad state here. But this is where Usopp steps up. And this is the Usopp we know now. We are at this point, like I said last chapter, where he'd been acting scared, and I wasn't quite sure why, but I think it was building for this moment, because Usopp gets to directly call out Eam for their shitty tactics. And Usopp just goes, I wouldn't dare abandon my crewmate at a time like this, especially on this island. True warriors do not run away. And Brook is like, my boy, Usopp? Like, he verging on tears. And Usopp is like getting himself up to his feet, looking down Gunko here, or Eam in this case. And he's like, look, I've dreamed of coming to this island that I've admired for so long. I wouldn't even dare disgrace myself. Not here of all places. I am burning with fury right now. These guys look down on Elbaph, and their gutless plan to like kidnap and steal children. This whole invasion, the way they've used monsters, like hijacking the minds of the warriors, like just getting them to slaughter each other. Like, what a cowardly and underhanded scheme. And as Usopp is just rattling off these insults, we see Gunko just immediately just like blink and just appear, just stabs Usopp, sends him flying, comes back as Brook steps up, fires an arrow, pierces Brook. They both go down, and we see Usopp tries to get back up, gets his slingshot out ready, and is like, look, the warriors of Elbaph here fight with sword and shield. They have put their lives on the line as a nation of warriors, and you are not conquering them fair and square. You've got to do it that way to fight with pride, otherwise you are just a spineless coward. And this whole tirade gets shut down by one sentence from Eam here, saying a dominant ruler never sullies their own hands. And as Usopp goes to fire his huge, gigantic skull explosion, we've seen his skull bomb, we see Gunko like blinks. Like, there's a good distance between where Usopp's ready to shoot and where Gunko's currently stood, and there is like a phase moment, and just immediately in front of Usopp, and where he's literally aimed to fire, he lets go, and Eam just puts a hand up to take the blast head on, and the skull explosion goes off. Usopp goes down immediately. Brook got hit as well in the blast, and Eam just obviously regenerates, like no damage whatsoever. But as the dust settles here, Luffy, Loki, and Ragnar all appear in the space. Like, Loki looking down on Gunko here, Luffy immediately jumps down to Usopp and looks at him on the floor, like completely bloodied and broken, like a very classic Usopp moment of just, he looks in sheer pain. This dude's gone through so much. And they're like, this is her, the source of haki we felt down in the underworld. This is who caused it. And Luffy looks down and just like changes expression, looks back over at Gunko and is like, right, I'm pissed now. Like, I'm here to just fucking take names. And Loki's like, well, we were going to let them off that easy, were we? You know what I mean? Like, with everything they've done. And literally, the only response here from Eam at this stage, the first face-off at last between the big heavyweights here, is to say, Nika, Nidhogg. This is the battle that will divide the world now. Submit or perish. And that's the end of the chapter. This double page here to basically sum up the first encounter Luffy is having with Eam. And it's looking down at Usopp. And Luffy is going to take this fight so seriously now to deal with not even Eam at full strength, because I just don't see Eam having everything at their disposal while possessing Gunko. I think all the shadow stuff, all the techniques they can probably use, but surely Eam's like original body is like this all-powerful being and this demonic individual. So this is like a real big warm-up fight, but a warm-up fight because it's still through Gunko who the fight is happening through. But this looks like a stacked fight, you know. Luffy, Loki, Ragnar, 3-on-1. Now you'd think the odds are stacked against Eam here, but I'm not counting Eam out for a second, because I think they've got a lot more up their sleeve than we've seen, and I think this fight is going to go very badly if certain things happen. So I'm looking forward to seeing. The chapter ends there. What a chapter it was. Usopp finally got a moment to, you know, stand up and be the warrior he was. I'm hoping he gets a much bigger moment, because I really don't want this arc to be rushed. The one thing I don't want now is for this to be it and Elbaph is done, because this needs to happen now for Usopp. Like, he's just been taken down. He can't end his arc here. So I'm looking forward to see where we go next. But thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought of this chapter, and I'll see you guys next time.